Welcome to Your Real Estate Show. We call it Your Real Estate Show because we will be covering topics of interest to you in the central New Jersey real estate market. Please send your inquiry, questions, and comments to me, ggati@verizon.net. That would be my name, ggati@verizon.net. I look forward to hearing from you. Now, let's go to Studio A. It's my privilege to welcome the Honorable Bernie Miller, Mayor of Princeton Township, to Your Real Estate Show. Bernie Miller has been a member of Princeton Township Committee since 2002. He was deputy mayor from 2004 to 2008 and was elected mayor in 2009. He previously served as chair of the Joint Princeton Cable TV Committee and headed the team that negotiated the current cable TV franchise with Comcast. And earlier, a member of the Princeton Township Housing Board during the construction of Griggs Farm. He retired from the business world in 1998 as Senior Vice President at Lockheed Martin International, after 30 years with Lockheed Martin and predecessor companies. He was previously CEO and chairman of Econ Inc., a research and consulting company that specializes in the economics of advanced technologies. He served on active duty in the United States Air Force from 1950 to 1957 and retired from the Air Force Reserve in 1968. Mr. Miller has a BS in Aeronautical Engineering from Penn State and an MS in the same field from the United States Air Force Institute of Technology. Mayor Miller.
Thank you, George. That's quite a mouthful. Thanks for the introduction. It's great to be here at TV 30. As you said, I was on the Cable TV Committee and chair of the Cable TV Committee during the 1990s, and when TV 30 started out, we had a broom closet in the Arts Council building, and it's great to see what TV 30 has grown to be. It's a vibrant, viable public access channel, and it does a great job.
It's really incredible. I have to agree with you. I've been with TV 30 as a volunteer for the past 6 years, and the growth has been just absolutely unbelievable. So I wanted to start out by thanking you so very much for putting this together and getting TV 30 off the ground with Comcast, and now it's also seen through Fios as well.
Right.
And Fios actually broadcasts this particular channel not just in Princeton and the borough, but also outside of Princeton. It is seen on channel 45 outside of the township. But in a previous show, I discussed real estate sales in Mercer County. For average single-family home sales price, the Princetons came in #1 with a staggering average selling price of over $1 million. And still #1 at $918,000 in 2009. The $1 million was in the fiscal year 2008. The next closest Mercer County in average selling price is West Windsor, where the average price for 2009 was $517,000, roughly half of the Princetons. Mayor Miller, what do you believe, excuse me, you gave me permission to call you Bernie, I'm sorry. Bernie, what do you believe are the factors influencing buyers to invest so much money to own a home in your town?
It's an interesting question, George, and there are many aspects to the answer. I think you can start with the fact that many communities need to brand themselves. They need some form of immediate identification. And Princeton, and that is the borough and the township, doesn't need to brand ourselves. We're already branded. No matter where you go in this world, if you say you're from Princeton, New Jersey, it's immediately identifiable with Princeton and Princeton University, and with many people with the history of the community. So you can start with the fact that it's a known community. You can go on from there and contrast Princeton with some of the surrounding communities that have high real estate values as well. And you mentioned one, you mentioned West Windsor. Montgomery also has relatively high real estate values. All three communities share one thing in common. They share an excellent school system, and that attracts people to the community. But what does Princeton have that differentiates it from the other two? Princeton has an identifiable town center, a downtown that is lively. It has excellent restaurants. It has stores. It has a library, and it is an attraction for people. And you put those factors together, and you've got a community where people want to live. It's a great community to live in. It's a great community for kids to go to school in, and it is a wonderful, wonderful, identifiable community. You can extend that to ask yourself, why do commercial businesses that are in this area, many of them far away from the center of Princeton, try and get located in the 0854 area, in the 085 zip code, or if they're not in the 085 zip code, go to the Princeton post office and rent a post office box. It's because they can say Corporation XYZ, P.O. Box 123, Princeton, New Jersey.
This leads me to my next question. The sales statistics I just mentioned previously is a combination of Princeton Borough and Princeton Township. And I was just curious, what is the status of the consolidation of Princeton Borough and Princeton Township, and what are the advantages and disadvantages of such a consolidation?
Mm-hmm. Let's start with the question of what do Princeton Township and Princeton Borough do at the present time. If you say to people, many people, I live in Princeton Town, well, let me phrase it differently. If you ask somebody who lives in this community, where do they live? They don't say Princeton Borough or Princeton Township. They say, I live in Princeton. And the second distinction is borough or township, but I live in Princeton. And the two Princetons share more joint services than almost any other two communities in the state of New Jersey. We share recreation. We have a single library. We have a single volunteer fire department. We share human services. We share a regional planning board, and that is quite unique to have a regional planning board. And many times in the past, in fact, in the 1970s, the 1980s, and the 1990s, consolidation of the two communities has come to the ballot. It's been studied and brought to the ballot. And it has passed in the township and failed in the borough for a variety of reasons. This past year, the two municipalities agreed to carry the issue of shared services and consolidation further. And both municipalities passed resolutions endorsing a study of additional shared services and full municipal consolidation. The proposal was presented to the State Department of Community Affairs, was approved by the State Department of Community Affairs, was to be funded at a level of $75,000, the studies were, by the State Department of Community Affairs. However, with the change of administration from Governor Corzine to Governor Christie, the amount of funding was reduced. It was cut in half. However, the work is going forward. Both municipalities have advertised for citizen members of a Consolidation Study Commission. The commission will consist of 2 elected representatives from each municipality, 2 from the borough, 2 from the township, and then 3 appointed citizen representatives. The citizen representatives will be charged with first of all, working with the municipalities to identify how the studies can be done with the restricted funding that we have, or perhaps where additional funding might be obtained. Then we're going to proceed to study the possibility of additional shared services. And you might ask, what shared services remain to be shared between the two municipalities? Mm-hmm. The two large cost centers that we're going to look at, and we'll also look at a number of smaller cost centers as well, but the two large cost centers are public works and police. And in both municipalities, police is one of our major expenditures. Public works also.
Well, are you currently seeking people to help you with this project? Is there a timeline? What is the time? Where are we within that time frame? It's been cut back from $70,000 to $35,000, but do you have the group set up right now? Do we have the two elected officials and the three non-elected folks set up?
The two governing bodies have designated the two elected officials, and the two municipalities have advertised for volunteers. And both municipalities received a large number of applications from people in the community that wanted to volunteer to serve on the study commission. In the case of the township, we've reviewed those applications, we've generated a short list, and we're moving toward interviewing those applicants that are on the short list. And I've discussed this with Mayor Trotman in the borough, and it's my understanding that the borough is moving in the same direction. And it is our plan to get the citizen representatives appointed in early June. We're somewhat behind the schedule that we had set for ourselves, but we're behind the schedule because we did not get the funding from the state for 3 months, until 3 months after we had anticipated receiving the funding.
Okay, so just give our viewers an idea. When would this occur? If everything moves properly on the timeline, when would this consolidation happen? A year from now, 2 years from now? Do you have any ideas about that?
Well, there are two aspects to it. One is the additional shared services, and that's quite separate from a full municipal consolidation. And we're going to look at the possibility of sharing public works, sharing police, and then in addition to that, look at full municipal consolidation, which would involve sharing all of the administrative functions that get performed by the two municipalities. And that means we would become one municipality. There would be no more borough or township, but one Princeton. If we continue to share services, we would share them as two separate municipalities. Timeline. The timeline that we're looking, the goal that we've set for ourselves is if the studies recommend either additional shared services or full municipal consolidation, to put those recommendations on the ballot for public referendum in November 2011.
That's pretty soon.
Yeah.
So we're talking roughly a year and a half.
Roughly a year and a half. And if we're going to get to referendum, it's my understanding that we have to be ready with the referendum well in advance of that date. In other words, probably by the spring.
Well, the plans sound excellent to me. Viewers, if you have any questions about it, please don't hesitate to contact me with any questions, and certainly we'll see if the mayor can answer those questions for you. And I'm assuming that once there's a consolidation and you have joint services, it would appear to me that you'll be able to cut down on some of the town and the borough expenses. So consolidation would mean lower taxes, perhaps. I'm assuming. This is an assumption.
I think that's the goal. The goal is to save the taxpayers money and to find better ways of delivering the service. You know, government is service. That's really all it is service. And if we can deliver it more efficiently, more effectively, that's good. But if we can save the taxpayers' money in the process, that's even better. And if the studies demonstrate that, I think in the current economic climate, the voters will recognize it. And I think there's a greater possibility that consolidation can be approved now than in the past.
Great, thank you very much about that. And as we're on the question of taxes and question about valuation, as I first started out, another often asked question relates to the recent property revaluation. Can you explain to our viewers what is revaluation and why is it needed? And I'll have a follow-up question to that.
Let me try, George. First of all, revaluation was ordered by the county, and there are a couple of measures that the county uses to determine whether or not a community must do a revaluation. One is time. If the revaluation, most recent revaluation was more than 10 years ago, the county can order you to do a revaluation. The second is a comparison of the assessed values in the community with the actual sales data for the community. And if that number drops below roughly 50%, in other words, if the assessed value drops below roughly 50% of the actual sales on a statistical basis, then the county can order a revaluation. Both of those criteria were met as far as the Princetons were concerned, and the county ordered us to do a revaluation.
I see. And what is market value? Who determines the assessed value of the homes? Will this revaluation cause an increase in taxes? These are questions that I'm asked. And so I'm hoping that you'll be able to give some comfort to our viewers about this revaluation and put everybody at ease.
Well, let me start with the question of who determines the assessed value of the property. The municipalities hired an independent contractor to do the appraisal. The independent contractor divides the community into neighborhoods. The neighborhoods are supposed to be consist of homes that are roughly similar or business properties that are roughly similar, roughly alike. They then examine 2 years' worth of sales statistics for those properties. And I think that in our case, they examined 2007 and 2008, if I remember correctly. But it was a 2-year database that they used. And based upon that data, and also based upon a visual examination of the property, exterior and interior, they make an appraisal. That is the appraised value. Now, all of this is taken out of the political process because the state and the county are very careful not to permit the elected officials to get into the middle of the appraisal process. So it is done independently by a contractor. The contractor works with the tax assessor for the municipalities. The role of the elected officials in this case is to hire the contractor. The contractor proceeds with the appraisal. If you, George, receive your appraised value and you look at it and say, this doesn't make sense to me, the appraisal is out of whack, it doesn't look right. You then had an opportunity to meet with the contractor and review your data and review other comparable data. And in many cases, people received appraisals and it didn't look right, but it didn't look right because the appraisal company could not get into the property for a variety of reasons. So they walked around the property and made their best guess. And they made their best guess high in most cases. So there were some adjustments made on the basis of that. If you were still dissatisfied after meeting with the contractor, in this case a company by the name of Appraisal Systems Incorporated. Your second recourse is to meet with the tax assessor for the municipalities, and Princeton Township and Princeton Borough have the same tax assessor. And the tax assessor can meet with you and review it. Your third recourse is to file with the county and ask the county to examine. And the closing date for doing all this is May the 14th. And after May the 14th, the data gets locked down. Now,
so we only have, whoever has any questions has, it's almost done.
Needs to move quickly.
Needs
yes.
to move quickly.
But
once we're beyond that May 14 date, is there any other recourse? Can they do a tax appeal? I believe tax appeals are in the beginning of the year up to a certain date. I think it's April.
Usually up to the middle of April, if I remember correctly. And this year the appeal is up to the middle of May, May the 14th.
But this tax appeal, is that through the county? That's through the county.
Yes.
So the appeal through the contractor, Appraisal Systems, Inc. is now over?
That's done.
That's done.
That's done.
So anything that's now left
is to the
got to be done to the county either this year or they're open to do it in subsequent years.
But let me add one more thing to it. And while the window closes on May the 14th, we recognize that there's still a lot of concern in the township. Township residents have a lot of concern about the validity of the assessment. And what Township Committee has asked our assessor to do is to look at the actual sales data for the period of October 2009 to October 2010. And look at the data in the neighborhoods as defined in the appraisal, and the report back to Township Committee comparing the actual data to appraised data.
Wow.
Now,
that's great.
If there are significant differences that are noted in that, our tax assessor can then go to the county and ask the county to do what is called a maintenance plan. The maintenance plan makes an adjustment. So we're going to do that on a year-to-year basis. And hopefully, when the market returns, real estate market returns to something that perhaps looks a little more like it did in the past, then we'll have a better understanding of how valid the numbers really are.
Yeah, and I believe there is a site, there's an internet site where somebody wants to learn more about the revaluation process can actually see it. I don't know the exact address, but I will find out, and it will be written right on the bottom of this.
It would be good to give it to your viewers as a crawler. But
I think that would be a good crawler.
Yeah, you're right. No, there are two things that determine what you pay in property taxes. One is the appraised value of your property, and you can look at how your property fared in the reevaluation compared to what your previous appraised value was, and roughly, and this is not exact, but roughly, if your appraised value went up by a factor of 2, you're roughly on average. If it went up by less than a factor of 2, you're a little ahead of the game. If it went up by more than a factor of 2, you're behind the game.
So that's the magical number, the factor of 2.
Roughly,
so that's the magical. I mean, it's a rough number.
Yeah.
I understand. So we are running very short on time right now. In the next couple of minutes.
Let me add just one thing to what I was saying, and that is the second thing that determines what you pay in taxes is the budget, and it's the municipal budget, township or borough, the school budget, and the county budget, and they all impact your taxes. So while your appraised value may go up more or less than 2, the other factor that has to enter into the equation is whether the budget goes up or down.
I understand. So in the next couple of minutes, if you don't mind, I wanted to just turn to a different but related topic, very much related, And the question to you, Bernie, is how is the current financial environment in Trenton affecting the Princeton Township, and what actions are you taking in face of recent cutbacks? And as I said, I think we could spend the whole show on this, but if you could just answer that in the next few minutes, I promise if you wanted to have another show, I'd be very happy to invite you back.
I'll be very brief, George.
And hopefully you would accept.
I'd be glad to. I'll be very brief. Princeton Township has been working on our budget since late 2009. We were on target to have a budget with a zero, municipal budget with a zero tax increase for 2010. However, we were on target until Governor Christie presented his budget address. When he presented his budget address, Princeton Township lost $450,000 that Governor Christie called state aid. And in reality, the largest part of that is something called a franchise tax that utilities pay for the privilege of running their wires and cables and poles and so forth in our right-of-way. When that was removed, our chances of getting to a zero tax increase went away with it. And we'll now probably have a tax increase somewhere between 1.5 and 2 cents, which is a pretty modest tax increase. However, the steps we're taking to control expenditures at this point, we have 3 categories of employees in the township: non-unionized, and then a public works union and a police union. We have told our non-unionized personnel no salary increases this year. We have asked our 2 unions who operate under contracts that in each case are valid through 2011 to accept no salary increases this year. Our public works union came back to us and said, we want the contractual salary increase. And at that point we said to the union that we will now exercise our management prerogative and we will reduce your work hours so that the amount of money we spend on salary for the unionized personnel is exactly the same as it was in 2009. And our public works people are working reduced hours. It's effectively a furlough. Same request has been made to our PBA, the police union. We expect to hear back from them in a matter of days. In the case of the police union, furloughing probably is not a possibility, and either the police union accepts and helps the township by saying we accept or will forego our salary increase, or we will exercise our management prerogative and we will have something that is very distasteful, and that is we will have to have layoffs.
Great. Well, thank you so very much. Thanks for being on the show. If any of our viewers have questions, is there a way they can reach you? Do you have email, or what's the best way to?
They can go to the township website. They can find my telephone number. They can find my email address, and if they look in the telephone book, I'm listed, and I'll give you my home telephone number, 921-8657. And I welcome hearing from our residents.
Thank you so very much. Thank you.